尊敬的祖马总统，
Your Excellency
尊敬的
President
非洲联
Zuma,
盟轮值主席穆加
Your
贝总统，
Excellency President Mugabe, rotating
尊
chairperson
敬
of
的
the African
各位
Union,
元首、首脑，
heads of state, heads
尊
of
敬的非
government,
盟委员会主席祖马女士，
chairperson of the African Union
尊敬
Commission,
的各
Dr.
位同
Zuma,
事、
distinguished
嘉宾。
guests, dear colleagues,
女士们、先生们、朋
ladies
友
and
们，
gentlemen, dear friends.
很高兴在
It gives me
美丽
great
的彩
pleasure
虹之国南非，
to meet
同
so
这么
many
多的
African
非洲
brothers
兄弟、
and sisters
新老朋友
who are both old and new
相聚一
friends of
堂。
mine in the rainbow nation of South Africa.
作为会议共同主席，
As the co-chair of the
我也
forum,
热烈欢迎大
I
家
wish to express
出席
my
中非
warm
合作
welcome
论
to
坛。
you for attending
约翰内斯
the
堡峰会
Johannesburg summit of the Forum on
衷心
China
感谢
Africa
东道国
Cooperation.
南非为
I
这次
also
会
wish to
议所
express
做的
my
精
sincere
心准备。
appreciation to
和周
South
到的安排。
Africa, host of the summit, for its warm hospitality.
这是我第7次踏上非洲大
This
陆，
is my 7th visit to the African
也
continent,
是我担任中国国家主席
and
之后
also my
第二
second
次
visit to
访问非洲。
Africa since taking office as the Chinese
每
president.
次来到非洲，
Every
都能
time
看
I
到非
visit
洲的新发
Africa,
展、新变化
I。see new progress and new changes on this
今天的非
continent.
洲呈现出蓬勃发展的
Today's
新景
Africa
象。
is a continent
令
of
人振奋，
encouraging and
令人鼓舞。
dynamic development.
非洲积极探索符合自
Africa
身发展
has
实际
actively
的，
explored a
发
path
展
of
道路。
development suited to its
坚
conditions
持以非
and
洲方式
adhered
解
to
决
the
非洲问
principle
题，
of solving African issues in
独
the
立自
African
主
way.
势头
Such a
锐不可挡。
momentum of independent development is unstoppable.
非洲积极推进工业化，
Africa has
谋
actively
求自
advanced
主、可持续发
industrialization
展，
and pursued sustainable
快速发展势
self-development.
头锐不可挡。
Such a momentum of rapid growth is
非洲
unstoppable.
加快一体化进程，
Africa has accelerated
在国
its
际舞台上
integration process
坚持用
and
一个声
speaks
音说
in
话，
one voice on the international
联合自
stage.
强势头
Such a
锐不可
momentum
挡。
of pursuing strength through unity is unstoppable.
我欣赏南非前总统曼德拉先
The
生
late
说过的一
President
句话
Nelson Mandela of South Africa once said,
我们站立在非洲世纪
"We
的破
stand
晓
at the
时分，
dawn of an African century,
在这一世纪里，
a century
非洲将在世
where
界民族之
Africa
林
will take
占据
its
领导位置
rightful place among the nations of the world."
我相信
I couldn't agree more with this statement, and I am convinced that African countries and people are embracing a new era that is truly theirs.
中国政府和人民
We in China, both the government and people, heartily rejoice over and are proud of Africa's
衷
achievements.
心祝愿非洲国家
We
和人民
sincerely wish African countries and people greater
不断取
achievements
得更大的成就，拥有
and
更加美好的
an
未来。
even brighter future in pursuing development and progress.
尊敬的各位同事、
Dear colleagues,
士们、先生，
ladies and gentlemen,
中非历来是命运
China and Africa share a common
共同
future.
的历史遭遇，
We Chinese and Africans have forged profound friendship
让中非人民结
through
下
our
了
common
深厚的
historical experience and in our common struggles.
我们始终风
We
雨
have
同舟
always supported each other in trying times.
中国援建的坦赞铁路
The Tanzara
和非盟会议
Railway
中心
and the Convention Center of the African Union, built with Chinese assistance, are landmarks of Africa-China friendship.
在援非
The
抗击
Chinese government and
埃博拉
people
行动中
took the
率
lead
先行动
in helping Africa
引领国际
fight
社会
Ebola
援非抗
and led the international community in its efforts to assist Africa to combat the epidemic. demonstrating the bond of brotherhood between China and Africa in time of
无私
difficulty.
支持中国重返
On our part, we deeply appreciate the African countries' selfless support to China's return to the United Nations and their donations made to China when China's Wenchuan and Yushu areas were hit by massive
铭记在心。
earthquakes.
中非友好历久弥坚，
What has made China-Africa friendship
其根本
durable
原因就
and
在于双
vigorous
方始终坚持
is that the
平
two
等
sides
对待
have always been guided by the principle of treating each other as equals, promoting win-win progress and
中非
common
永远
development,
是好朋友、
and
好伙
enhancing
伴。
sincere friendship and cooperation. China and Africa will forever remain good friends, good
中非都
partners,
肩负
and
发
good
展国家
brothers.
改善民生的使命。
China and Africa both shoulder the historical mission of developing our respective countries and improving the livelihood of our
正
peoples.
处于工业化的
Africa
新时
enjoys
代
abundant natural and human resources and has reached the stage of taking off in industrialization. China, after reform and opening up of over 30 years, is now in a position to help Africa realize sustainable self-development with technology, equipment, professional and
更
skilled
拥有
personnel,
支持非洲
and
发展
capital.
强大的政治优势。
In particular, China has a strong political commitment to supporting Africa in achieving development and prosperity. China and Africa share mutual needs and complementarities and face a rare historic opportunity in pursuing development through cooperation. In the new era, we should carry forward the traditional China-Africa friendship and translate the strengths of our traditional friendship into driving forces.
为中非人民创造更多实实在
To
在的
boost
成果
solidarity, cooperation, and development so that we will deliver more tangible benefits to our peoples and make greater contribution to the development of the world in a more balanced, just, and inclusive manner and to the building of a new model of international partnership based on win-win
先
cooperation.
生们
Dear colleagues,
当
ladies
前
and
世界格
gentlemen,
局正在经历
the
深
world
刻演化，
is undergoing profound changes.
经济全球化，社会信
Economic
息化，
globalization and IT application have tremendously unleashed and advanced
我
social
们面临
productive
前所未
forces.
有的发展机遇。
We are facing unprecedented opportunities of development.
霸权主义、
On the other hand,
恐怖主义、
hegemony, terrorism, financial turbulence,
环境危机
and
等问题
environmental
越加
crisis
突出，
have become more
给我们带来
pronounced,
了前所未有的挑战。
posing unprecedented challenges to us.
中方将秉持亲实、真实、亲
In
诚
conducting
对
China's
非政策
relations
理
with
念
Africa, we adhere to the principles of sincerity, practical results, affinity, and good faith, and uphold the values of friendship, justice, and shared interests. And we will work with Africa to embrace a new era of win-win cooperation and common development. With this in mind, I propose that the new type of China-Africa strategic partnership be upgraded to a comprehensive, strategic, and cooperative partnership.
五大支
To forge this partnership, we should strengthen the following 5 major pillars.
坚持政治
First,
上平等
we should remain committed to political equality and mutual trust.
是中非友好的基石。
A high degree of political mutual trust is the foundation of China-Africa friendship. We should respect each other's choice of development path and not impose our own will on the
在事关
other.
双方核心利益
On issues involving core interests and major concerns of each side,
相互支持，
we should show mutual understanding, support each other, and jointly uphold equity and
中方
justice.
始终主张，非洲
China
是
strongly
非洲人的
believes
非洲，
that Africa belongs to the African people
应该由非洲
and
人
that African
说了算。
affairs should be handled by the African people.
第二，
Second,
第二，
Second, we should remain committed to promoting win-win economic cooperation. We Chinese value both friendship and justice as well as shared interests and place more importance on the former. Friendship and justice, which defines China-Africa relations, require us to boost Africa's development with China's development and ultimately deliver require us to boost Africa's development with China's development and ultimately deliver win-win progress and common development through mutually beneficial cooperation. We should fully leverage the strengths of political mutual trust and economic complementarities between China and Africa and focus on industrial capacity cooperation as well as the three networks and industrialization. By doing so, we can deepen China-Africa cooperation in all areas and bring its benefits to our peoples. Third, we should remain committed to mutually enriching cultural exchanges. Diversity makes the world beautiful. We are proud that both China and Africa have time-honored and splendid civilizations. We should strengthen cultural exchanges and mutual learning between China and Africa, facilitate more exchanges between the youths, women, think tanks, media, universities, and other sectors of the two sides. Promote cultural interactions, policy coordination, and people-to-people exchanges to advance common progress and ensure the sustained growth of China-Africa friendship from generation to generation. Fourth, we should remain committed to mutual assistance in security. Poverty is the root cause of chaos, while peace is the guarantee for development. Development holds the key to solving all problems. China supports the settlement of African issues by Africans in the African way. We are of the view that in resolving security issues, both the symptoms and the root causes must be addressed in a holistic way. China stands ready to take an active part in Africa's efforts in capacity building for maintaining and strengthening peace and security and support Africa in its endeavors to speed up development, eradicate poverty, and realize durable peace. Fifth, we should remain committed to solidarity and cooperation in international affairs. China and Africa share common position on and interests in a wide range of international issues. We should strengthen coordination and collaboration so as to make the global governance system more just and equitable and uphold our common interests. China will continue to stand up and speak for Africa at the United Nations and other international fora to support Africa in playing a greater international role. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to build China-Africa comprehensive strategic and cooperative partnership, China will implement 10 cooperation plans with Africa in the next 3 years. Guided by the principle of government guidance, business being the major actors, market operation, and win-win cooperation. These plans aim at addressing 3 bottleneck issues holding back Africa's development, namely inadequate infrastructure, lack of professional and skilled personnel, and funding shortage, accelerating Africa's industrialization and agricultural modernization, and achieving sustainable self-development. First, we will implement China-Africa Industrialization Plan China will actively promote industrial alignment and production capacity cooperation between China and Africa and encourage more Chinese enterprises to make business investment in Africa. In cooperation with Africa, we will build or upgrade a number of industrial parks, send senior government experts and advisors to Africa, and set up regional, co-vocational education centers and several schools for capacity building. China will also train 200,000 technical personnel and provide 40,000 training opportunities for African personnel in China. Second, we will implement China-Africa Agricultural Modernization Plan. China will share its experience in agricultural development with Africa and transfer readily applicable technologies to it. We encourage Chinese enterprises to engage in large-scale farming, animal husbandry, and grain storage and processing in Africa to create more local jobs and increase farmers' income. China will carry out agricultural development projects in 100 African villages to raise rural living standards, send 30 teams of agricultural experts to Africa, and establish a 10+10 cooperation mechanism between Chinese and African agricultural research institutes. China is greatly concerned about the poor harvest caused by El Nino in many African countries and will provide 1 billion RMB yuan worth of emergency food aid to the affected countries.
三是中非基础设施合作计划。
Third, we will implement China-Africa Infrastructure Cooperation Plan. China will step up mutually beneficial cooperation with Africa in infrastructure planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance. We support Chinese enterprises' active participation in Africa's infrastructural development, particularly in sectors such as railways, roads, regional aviation, ports, electricity, and telecommunications to enhance Africa's capacity for sustainable development. We will also support African countries in building and upgrading 5 transportation universities. Fourth, we will implement China-Africa Financial Cooperation Plan. China will expand its RMB settlement and currency swap operations with African countries, encourage Chinese financial institutions to set up more branches in Africa, and increase its investment and financing cooperation with Africa in multiple ways to provide financial support and services for Africa's industrialization and modernization drive. Fifth, we will implement China-Africa Green Development Plan. China will support Africa in bolstering its capacity for green, low-carbon, and sustainable development, and support Africa in launching 100 projects to develop clean energy, protect wildlife, promote environment-friendly agriculture, and build smart cities. China-Africa cooperation will never be pursued at the expense of Africa's ecosystem and long-term interests. Sixth, we will implement China-Africa Trade and Investment Facilitation Plan. China will carry out 50 aid for trade programs to improve Africa's capacity for conducting internal and external trade and investment. China is ready to negotiate with countries and regional organizations in Africa comprehensive free trade agreements covering trade in goods and services and investment cooperation, and increase import of African products. China will support African countries in enhancing law enforcement capacity in areas such as customs, quality inspection, and taxation. We will also engage in cooperation with Africa in standardization, certification, and e-commerce. Seventh, we will implement China-Africa Poverty Reduction Plan. While intensifying its own poverty reduction efforts, I have to say that in the past 30 years and more, we lifted 700 million people out of poverty, making contribution to the achievement of Millennium Development Goals and human development on the whole. However, we still have 70 million people living under poverty. We're determined in the next 5 years, by 2020, when we finish the building of a moderate, prosperous society in all respects, eradicate poverty comprehensively and completely. At the same time, we will make our contribution to the international efforts in poverty alleviation. We will carry out in Africa 200 Happy Life projects and poverty reduction programs focusing on women and children. We will cancel outstanding debts in the form of bilateral governmental zero-interest loans borrowed by the relevant least developed African countries that mature at the end of 2015. Eighth, we will implement China-Africa Public Health Cooperation Plan. China will help Africa strengthen its public health prevention and control system, as well as capacity building by participating in the building of the African Center for Disease Control. We will support pace-setting cooperation between 20 Chinese hospitals and 20 African hospitals and upgrade hospital departments. We will continue to send medical teams to Africa and provide medical assistance such as the Brightness Action Program and maternal and child care. We will provide more anti-malaria compound artemisinin to Africa and encourage and support local drug production by Chinese enterprises in Africa to increase Africans' access to medicine. Ninth, we will implement China-Africa Cultural and People-to-People Cooperation Plan. China will build 5 cultural centers in Africa and provide satellite TV reception to 10,000 African villages. We will provide to Africa 2,000 educational opportunities with diplomas or degrees and 30,000 government scholarships. Every year, we will sponsor visits by 200 African scholars and study trips by 500 young Africans to China and train 1,000 media professionals from Africa. We support the opening of more direct flights between China and Africa to boost our tourism cooperation. Tenth, we will implement China-Africa Peace and Security Cooperation Plan. China will provide $60 million of grant to support the building and operation of the African Standby Force and the African capacity for the immediate response to crisis. China will continue to participate in UN peacekeeping missions in Africa and support African countries' capacity building in areas such as defense, counterterrorism, riot prevention, customs, and immigration control. To ensure the successful implementation of these 10 cooperation plans, China decides
提供
to provide
总额600亿美元的
a total
资金支
of
持，
$60 billion of funding support.
这包括
It includes
提供50亿美元的无偿援助
$5 billion
和无息贷
of
款，
grant and zero interest
包
loans,
括提供350亿美元的
$35 billion
优惠
of
优
preferential
惠性质贷款和出口
facilities
信贷
and
额度，
export credit
并
line
提高
and
优惠贷
concessional
款的
loans
优惠度，
on more favorable terms.
为中非发展基金
An increase
和非洲
of
中小
$5
企业
billion
发展专项贷
to the
款
China Africa Development Fund and the special loan for the development for African SMEs respectively, and the China Africa Fund of Production Capacity Corporation with an initial contribution of $10 billion.
尊敬的各位同事、女士们、先生们，
Dear colleagues, ladies and
今年
gentlemen,
是中非合作论坛成立
this
15
year
周年。
marks the 15th anniversary
15年
of
来
FOCAC.
中非各领域
The
务实合
past
作成果
15
丰
years
硕，
have seen fruitful progress in
2014
China-Africa practical
中非
cooperation
贸易
across
总
the
额和
board.
中国对非
Two-way
洲
trade in
非
China's
金融类投
total
资存量
non-financial investment
分
in
别是
Africa in
2000年的
2014
22倍，
was 22
和60
times
倍。
and 60 times that of the year
中国对非洲
2000
经济发展的
respectively,
贡献
which shows
显著
China's
增长，
contribution to Africa's economic
中非
development
合作
has
论
risen
坛
significantly.
已经成为引
FOCAC
领
has
中非
become
合
a
作的
pace
一
setter
面旗
in
帜，
China-Africa
为
cooperation,
南南合作
an example
树立了
of
典范，
South-South cooperation,
成为带动国际社会
and a leader
加大对非洲关注和投
in
入的
increasing
先锋。
international attention to and input in
当前
Africa.
中非关系
China-Africa relations
正处在历史
have
上
today reached a
最好时期。
stage of growth
我
unmatched
们
in
应
history.
该登高望远，
We should scale the heights,
阔步前行，
look afar, and take bold
让我
steps.
们携手努力，
Let us join hands,
汇聚起中非
pull the
24
vision
亿人民的
and
智
strength
慧
of the
和力量，
2.4 billion Chinese
共
and
同开
Africans,
启中非合作共赢
and open a new era of China-Africa win-win
新时代。
cooperation and common
谢谢大家。
development. Thank you.